is our study guide for Standard 411, our first test. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. 8 times 10 is 80. 7 times 100 is 700. Now, I talk to the kids, you know, lots of times we say, well, 7 times 1 is 7. I'm multiplying it by 100, so I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to tack on 2 zeros. But we've talked in class about why we're tacking on those zeros, where that's coming from. If I multiply 7 times 100, if I think about place value, 7, that would be 7 ones. 7 ones times 100, basically I'm moving my 7 2 place values to the left. So that's why that becomes 700. All right, so this one, we have 6,000 equals blank times 6. So we were looking for a factor. So what factor times 6 gives us 6,000? Well, that factor is 1,000 because 1,000 times 6 is 6,000. All right, this one, and I showed you this we needed to mark out because it was wrong. It's not tens, it's hundreds. Because when I multiply 10 times a 10, I'm going to get 100, okay? So 3 tens times 5 tens equals 1,500. Okay, and here we had to figure out the missing factor of 36 times 100 equals 3,600. All right, let's look at this next one. It says, which 2 expressions will give the same product as 20 times 50? Now, again, a lot of times when you read your questions, you don't remember 2. We're looking for 2 expressions here, not just 1. So make sure you read your questions, and if it tells you you need 2, then you need to pick out 2. Okay, and these are just expressions down here because they don't have what they're equal to. There's no equal sign. So it's not an equation, it's an expression. And we're looking for 2 that have the same product. Product is just the answer to a multiplication problem. So we need to know the answer or the product to 20 times 50. So we have 20 times 50. All right, so that's the same thing as 2 tens times 5 tens. Well, 2 tens times 5 tens, 2 times 5 is 10, but we're multiplying tens times tens, so that's going to be hundreds. So when you multiply 10 times 10, that gives you 100, right? So we have 10 hundreds. So that would be the same thing as 1,000 or 1,000. 1,000 is the same thing as 1,000. So you could also look at this and say 2 times 5 is 10. And then I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to write down those 2 zeros, which is how our kids are going to look at it most of the time. But we can't really just say tack on zeros just because when you get into decimals, you're not tacking on zeros, you're moving them over a place value. All right, let's look at this one. 2 tens times 5 times 10. So here we're going to do what's in parentheses first, and we want to get 1,000. We're looking for 2 expressions that will give us 1,000. Okay, so here, 2 tens is the same thing as 20. Then we have 20 times 5. Well, I know that 20 times 5 is 100. 2 times 5 is 10, and then I have that other 0, so I can write it down. Okay, and then I'm going to multiply that times 10. 100 times 10 is 1,000. So A does have the same product, 1,000. So that one would be correct. Let's check B. So I have 10 tens. Well, 10 tens is the same thing as 100. Here in parentheses, we have 2 tens times 5. Well, I determined a while ago, 2 tens times 5 is 100. So I've got 100 times 100. Well, 100 times 100, look at all these zeros. 1 times 1 is 1, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 100 times 100 is 10,000. That's not the same product, so that would not be one of our answers. All right, let's look at this one. I have 20 times 5 times 10. What's 5 times 10? Well, that's 50. So here I have the same thing, 20 times 50. times 50. So obviously that's going to give us 1,000, which is the answer we're looking for. Here I had, let's just check D to make sure, 2 times 5 tens. That would be 2 times 50, which is 100. So that is not one of our answer choices. All right, let's look at number 7. Ty reads 30 pages every night. How many pages will he read in the 30 days of November? So we have 30 pages every day for 30 days. So let's see how many pages he'll read in the month of November. Okay, so I have, this is the same thing as saying I have 3 tens times 3 tens. So I could write 3 tens times 3 tens. Again, I know 3 times 3 would be 9, and 10 times 10 is 100. So we have 900. And you could also say, what's 3 times 3? Well, 3 times 3 is 9. I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to write down my 2 zeros, okay? But we just want kids to have some number sense behind while we're adding those zeros. There is a reason for that, okay? So he reads 900 pages in the month of November. Okay. Let's look at number 8. Evaluate the product. So the way we do multiplication in 4th grade, we do not use standard algorithm in 4th grade. We use partial product and area model. So I'm going to show you both of those ways. So with area model, it's just more visual for students, and it's where we like to start them off. So 142 times 3. So when I'm multiplying times a single digit, that's going to be out here to the side. So that kind of represents my width. If you think of this as an area model, and you probably remember the formula for area, which is length times width. Well, that's kind of what our area model for multiplication is. It really is. Now I'm going to take my 142 and I'm going to put it in expanded form at the top of my area model. So the value for 1 would be 100. The value for the 4 would be 40. And the value for 3 would just be 3. 140 and 3, oops, I'm sorry, the value for the 2. Woo! The value for the 2 would just be 2. We're looking at 142 on the top. I apologize. Okay, so now I have my area model. Now I'm just going to partition it out to show what I'm going to be multiplying in each section. So this first section right here, if I'm multiplying my length times width, well, my length is 100, my width is 3, so I have 100 times 3. I know that 100 times 3 is 300. And this is where it's important to know those multiplications by 10, 100, 1,000. That's why this is important, because when we get into area model, this is what you're going to need to know. All right, so my next area model, the next part of my rectangle is this middle part. For this middle part, I'm going to, again, multiply my length, which is 40, times my width, which is still 3. Okay, so 4 times 3 is 12. I have that 1 0, so 40 times 3 is 120. And then last, I'm going to multiply the last portion of my area model. So I have 2 times 3, which is 6. Now these are my partial products, so I'm going to add those together. I have 300, 120, and 6. When I add that together, I get 426 as my product. Okay? All right, so this is the area model. That's what that looks like. Now let's look at partial product. Now partial product is set up more like the standard algorithm. So you're going to line your numbers up vertically. 142 times 3. Okay? Now, I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to multiply times my place value. So I'm starting with this 2 times 3. So right here, I would just write 3 times 2, because the value of the 2 is just 2. Well, what is 3 times 2? 3 times 2 is 6. All right, next, I'm going to multiply my tens place times 3, okay? So now I'm going to multiply 3 times, now the value of this 4 here is 40. So I'm multiplying 3 times 40. 3 times 40 is 120, so I'm going to write that down. Okay, now I'm going to multiply times my hundreds place, which is 100. So now I'm going to multiply 3 times 100, which is 300. And then I'm going to add those partial products together, and I get 426. Okay, so you can do this either way. Really, whichever way your child prefers, it doesn't matter to me. However they want to solve. Again, this is more like standard algorithm. The only thing that's important you have to watch with this is making sure you're keeping your place values lined up. So your ones place has to stay in line, your tens place, and your hundreds place. All right, let's look at number 9. Find the product of 1,306 times 5. I'm going to do this one using area model. So I'm going to set up my area model. I'm multiplying times 5, a single digit, so I'm going to move that over here to the side. And I'm going to put my 1,306 in expanded form at the top of my area model. So the value of this 1 is 1,000. The value of this 3 is 300. And the value of this, well, I don't have any 10s, so I wouldn't have to put anything for that. The value of my 6 is just 6. And then I'm going to partition my area model and solve. Okay, so for this first part of my area model, I'm going to have 1,000 times 5. 1,000 times 5 is 5,000. For the next part of my area model, so this part right here, I'm going to have 300 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. I have those 2 zeros. So 1,500. And then the last part, this part right here, has 6 times 5, which is 30. I have my partial product, so now I can add. So I have 5,000, 1,500, or 1,500, and 30. When I add, I get 6,530 for my answer. So the product of 1,306 times 5 is 6,530. All right, number 10. A factory makes 2,542 chairs each month. What is the total amount of chairs the factory makes in 6 months? Okay, so we're trying to figure out how many chairs a factory makes in 6 months. And I know that each month they make 2,542 chairs. So I'm going to multiply 2,542 times 6. So 2,542 times 6. Let's do this one partial product. So we'll do this one different than we did the other. All right, so I have, again, I'm going to set it up just like standard algorithm. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my times 6 right here. So I'm going to put times 6, and I'm going to mark this out so it doesn't look confuse anybody, okay? So here's my partial product multiplication. So I'm going to start with my ones place, okay? So I'm going to multiply my 6 times 2. So 6 times 2 gives me 12. Then I'm going to move to my tens place. Now remember, this is not 4, it's 40. So I have 6 times 40. 6 times 4 is 24, and then I have 1 0, so I have to write it down. 6 times 4 is 240. Okay? Then I have my hundreds place. So remember, the value of this 5 is 500. So I'm going to multiply 6 times 500. 6 times 500. Okay, 6 times 5 is 30. And then I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to write them down. Now, this is where it gets harder to keep your numbers in line. This is probably why I like the area model better, just because it kind of gets harder. It gets more confusing for kids to keep their numbers in line. All right, last but not least, we're going to multiply our thousands place. So I have 2,000, and I'm multiplying that by 6. 6 times 2,000. 6 times 2 is 12. And I'm going to have 3 zeros to write. So 6 times 2,000 is 12,000. And then I'm just going to add all my partial products. So I have 2, 5, 2, 5, and 1. So 15,252 would be my answer. Okay. All right, which of the following shows how to multiply 5 times 418? So basically, it wants you to show how you know to put this in expanded form. So you're actually multiplying 5 times. This would be 400, this would be 10, and this would be 8. So you're actually multiplying 5 times 400, 5 times 10, and 5 times 8. So let's see which one of those shows that. This one shows 5 times 40. Well, that's not right, so we know it's not A. 5 times 400, yes. 5 times 10, yes. 5 times 8, yes. So B would be our correct option. This one shows 5 times 4. That's not right. Okay? All right, look at number 12. A plane ticket from Mobile, Alabama to New York City, New York, costs $546. A plane ticket from Mobile, Alabama to Los Angeles, California costs $382. A group of 5 people are in Mobile. How much money can the group save by going to Los Angeles instead of New York City? All right, so let's just take this in pieces. So it's telling me that a plane ticket from Mobile to New York costs $546. Now, how many people did it say were going to be going? A group of 5 people. So I want to know how much it would cost that group of 5 people to go from Mobile to New York. So let's see. I could multiply what one plane ticket cost by 5 because there's 5 people. So I'm going to do 546 times 5. And I'm going to use area model on this. I'm going to put my 5 over here to the side. This number goes in expanded form at the top of our area model. The value of 5 is 500. The value of 4 is 40. And the value of this 6 is just 6. All right, and here I'm going to multiply 500 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 zeros. So 500 times 5 is 2,500. For this part, I'm going to multiply 40 times 5 because I have 40. And then the width is still 5. 4 times 5 is 20. And then I have 1 zero, so I'm going to write it down. Another thing kids will often forget is to write down those zeros, so make sure you don't forget that. All right, and then this last part, I've got 6 times 5. 6 times 5 is 30. So now I'm going to add up my partial products to figure out how much those plane tickets would cost. All right, so for all 5 of those people to go from Mobile, so I'm going to say from Mobile to New York, I'm just going to put M to NY for New York, it would cost $2,730. Okay, now we need to know how much it would cost those same 5 people to go from Mobile to Los Angeles. And it says a plane ticket from Mobile to Los Angeles costs $382. All right, so we have $382 and we have the same group of 5 people, so we're going to multiply that times 5. And let's just use our area model again. It's kind of my go-to. It's the one I like the most. Now, like I said, if you'd rather do partial product, do partial product. Okay, I'm going to put my 5 over here. This number goes in expanded form at the top of my model. So I have 300, I have 80, and I have 2. 382. Okay, and I'm just going to partition. All right, for this first part, I'm going to have 300 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. I have 2 zeros. So 1,500 for that part. For this part of my area model, I have, sorry about that, I'm going to move around, get the light to come back on. Okay. So I have 80 times 5. 8 times 5 is 40, and I have 1 zero, so I'm going to write it down. And then for our last part, we have 2 times 5, which is 10. And then I'm going to add all these up, so I have 1,500, 400, 10. So to go from Mobile to LA, it is $1,910. All right, now let's go back and look at our question. So our question said, how much money can the group save by going to Los Angeles instead of New York? So to figure out how much they could save, we need to subtract our 2 numbers. So let's subtract 2,730 minus 1,910. Gonna have to do some borrowing. So they could save $820 by going to Los Angeles instead of New York. Okay, let's look at number 13. It says Bill solved 3,462 times 4 using an area model. His teacher said that he made a mistake. Which statement below best describes the mistake that Bill made? All right, so we can see he's multiplying 3,462 times 4. So he set up his area model, and he put his 4 in the right place. He has his expanded form, 3,462. Well, that's correct. So then here he multiplied. So when you multiply 3,000 times 4, that would be 3,000 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12, and then you have 3 zeros to add, so that's correct. Let's look at this part. 400 times 4, so you would multiply 400 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and you have 2 zeros to add, and he did add his 2 zeros. Well, let's look at this part. You have 60 times 4. 6 times 4 is 24, but what did Bill not do? He did not put his 0. So we found where he messed up. And that happens so many times. So just be careful and make sure you put your 0. So let's see which one it is. A, Bill got the wrong product when he multiplied 3,004. No, he got it right. B, Bill should not have multiplied 4 by 400. Yes, he should have, and he did. That's right. C, Bill got the incorrect answer when he multiplied 4 times 60. That's it, because when he multiplied 4 times 60, he only got 24, and we know it should have been 240. So C would be the answer. D, Bill should have added a 0 to the numbers. Well, he should have on this one, and he didn't. But should he have added a 0 to this one? 4 times 2 is 8. No, so that would not be the correct answer. Your correct answer would be C. All right, that's all for this study guide. And if you can do good on these questions, then you should be absolutely fine on our test. Good luck.